Hi, I'm Seamless, and today I'm going to show you how to make this sound. Fun stuff. As you can see, it is a Serum into a Maximus into an EQ, and then it goes out. Obviously, there's lots of compression and just a teensy bit of just some shaping. There's not a lot of incredibly complicated stuff happening here. Here's what the Serum sounds like without all that. Now, that big whip we're hearing is because while I am using the compressor in here, I'm actually automating a couple bits of it, including just not just the threshold of release, but also the 3 bands themselves. Not only can you actually change the level of them yourself in here if you've never tried that before, but you can also make them modulation targets from here. And then when you drag and drop it onto them, you can start to mess with it in here. So here's the low band, and then I did the mid and high band up here. And a little bit of extra motion on them. And the purpose of this, much like putting your LFO, like your main modulation, which this is, on like a level or something to kind of like oomph particular parts of the feeling of your motion, or doing the same thing on the sub so that it's still happening on the low end, you can kind of do that like in the band basis, so that really whatever's happening ahead of it, it'll be compressed, but then you can be in control of the spectral motion it creates. Of course, this is going to engender high dynamic range, and then you're going to want to compress it after the fact. That's what happened there. Yeah. So let's listen to this again. And here's what it sounds like without the compressor. Really, really, really quiet. I'm going to crank it. Wow. Of course, there's still whippy stuff happening in here. I am distorting it. This is a kind of a wave shapery kind of thing deal. And the reason why this shape exists way to hell up here, wave shaping is a kind of an amplitude-based thing where like a shape is going to get pushed through this and kind of pulled through the line if it's loud enough to do that. This isn't the bipolar mode. I just went in the wrong window. Yeah, the asymmetrical mode. So that means that this shape will be evenly applied to both the positive and the negative polarity, with this being like the crossover point here. The idea is that unless only if the audio gets to be loud enough, then it'll get kind of busted up. So when you hear like a kind of a top end crackle that doesn't last for very long, and actually sort of feels like an extra layer of things because it doesn't really happen until it gets automated high enough. Plus, I'm also modulating the wet dry on that particular parameter too, on this distortion. I'm doing all the rest of the stuff before the distortion, things like messing around with the delay. I'm going to turn this back on just so we can hear the effects. We can hear a little bit of delays of the result there. And along with modulating the time through here, I'm also modulating feedback to be way up on the low end of the modulation. So when it's actually at its quietest is the feedback at its highest. And then the feedback kind of comes off when it becomes more audible, so that the effect is like present, but it's not like overstaying itself. This is just a flanger filter. It's super duper light. Not much is happening to it. And in fact, it's being automated off on the high end of the modulation. So it begins with a little lasery feel, and then at the high end, it has its tone that's not affected by it. And then here's a phaser, just being here mostly to break up some of the spectral results of what happened past here. So let's talk about what's happening there. Whamp. Actually, yeah, leave you on. Yeah. So this is just the Combs filter that you get inside the miscellaneous tab. And the purpose of this was I was doing pretty basic FM shenanigans where we're having a low guy FM'd by a high guy, which creates like a loud enough mess. Loud enough. We're loud enough now. Now that brokenness is coming mostly, I think because there's honestly a lot of options here from what I'm doing in the remap here. So this remap looks just like kind of like a straight line. Like, why is this any kind of a deal? This is basically formant going down. The opposite of this is what it looks like when you do pulse width stuff. Like this is a pulse width modifying happening here. So here's the whole actual oscillation as indicated by the full straight line being still here. And then if I do one of these, then it goes down low. And this has the same effect as the other guy, only it goes down. So it's formatting down. The reason I'm doing that is because when you change an octave up, and you increase the pitch of whatever your modulator is in FM, it also increases like its effect on the tone. And if you want to change the tone, you can either adjust how hard you're FMing things, which might not have the same like feeling, or you can change the source itself. That's why I attempted to do here, and I'm modulating it, and that's creating epic phase shenanigans because it's just it's modulating the phase like while it's playing, and that's where like a lot of the brokenness is coming from, and that brokenness is working for us. It's creating this kind of like almost a note tone, which so actually we got to talk about the carrier too. So the carrier was originally a triangle wave, and what I did there, this being the triangle wave here, this is sort of normal square harmonic size. Like, I'll just straight up do this again. Yeah. Boop. So here's what a triangle wave looks like additively, right? And it's got the every other harmonic thing going on, like a square wave does. And when you FM that by something that's an octave or 2 octaves higher than what you're doing, it gives you that nice kind of hollow texture. And then if I want to, I can make that kind of become hard again by adding in some of those taken away harmonics. Like that, you can really get that bitey kind of saw texture back if that's something that you wanted. In this case, like while I did want that in there, I also kind of wanted the hollow thing to be kind of primary. So you get like an over-representation of the original every other harmonic, and then just a little bit of inching in there to kind of screw with the shape a bit. And of course, phase helps. The reason why this isn't as destructive as you think it'd be is because on oscillator A and B, along with the unison I have going on, I have the phase turned all the way over to the memory setting. This is fun because what it means is that when the next note plays, it will begin where the phase left off of the previous note. It won't restart phase. It will not randomly pick a new one. It will start off where the last one left off, automatically solving that particular source of clicking issue. At least this particular one. It doesn't help this guy because if he's being modulated, which means it doesn't matter if it tries to start where the last one began or left off, it's not gonna be accurate. Anyway, point of that was to create this. This is just what these filters do to things, and these filters are mostly just like an exercise in phase elimination, and just destroying and causing anything that has any kind of sharpness to it to have that airy, smooth texture. That's a phase property. Of course, moving it too much is usually devastating, and that's where this shape comes into play. How fast and at what angle you move these things in this LFO has a tremendous impact on the tone. So that's always part of the modulation like consideration. And the reason why I'm doing this like double curve thing here is because when you look at a curvature of a curve, how long it spends flat like this is it like lingering at a particular percentage of your parameters, versus when it's curved like this, which means rather when it's like straight up moving up and down like that, it means it's moving really fast. Like this is how fast it would get down to the bottom if it were moving all of that fast that whole time. And the difference, like the reason why it's valuable is because the middle of that is this like straight line thing, and this is the most possible, like the most amount of motion for the longest amount of time, which for a lot of parameters, like really devastating ones like these guys, might just be too much. So then you get something like this, where there's a tremendous amount of flatness to the beginning of the curve, which means it's not moving very fast, and then it's increasing its speed, and then it moves faster and faster until it's terminated. And this gives us an impression of a held position of the parameter, which gives us some tone for a second, which we don't get when it's moving all the time forever. So middle ground there is having it do a little bit of both. And the additional bonus here, I tried to say bonus and value, and it said value. Wow. But the value here is that we get to kind of pick where it lingers. And you can hear a little bit about how that started to have an effect on the overall tone just by moving it around like that. Well, let's start to add in some of the other stuff so we hear the impact. This guy is one of the more subtle effects. You can hear it really at the highest high end how sometimes it'll freak out. And that sometimes this is a result a little bit of the phase being different on all the notes, like as it kind of processes through. That's going to change the shape of the modulation when it happens. And that's just something that happens in Serum a lot, especially if you want to use any amount of unison, just because it's difficult, in my opinion, to keep like a phase locked unison effect. That's not just a particular kind of pluck, you know. Indeed. And now that we have that, we can go out and post. The first step is compressing its crap off. So with that big whip that we came in there with in the multiband processing here, like I said, we created a higher dynamic range effect. And to that end, I wanted that, and I also wanted the result that will happen when you cram that together into a very not dynamic effect, which is mostly what we like that kind of crushy, smoothie, schmooshy feel is what that is, right? So this is a pretty OTTE thing to do. Let's look at the thing. So we got this main bit around 500 hertz, which is like most of where a lot of growly tone lives. And everything below that is kind of bassy consideration. Everything above that is sort of higher frequency consideration. So we get that split up that way. And then the low end, the mid, and the high end all three of them have different kind of speed properties. But for most of them, the low end is the slowest one, just because I want it to be louder. I don't want it to like add the harmonics that are more than what's already happening in the mid and the high at this stage. So mid is a little bit faster, high is like only a little bit faster. The release time is actually slower, but the sustain time is smaller, which means that it creates a smaller envelope at instance, which I'm not sure oscillate is the right word, but it re-triggers faster. And then on the master, also really light touch on that, just because we did just so much dynamics processing ahead of this. So it was like, this is all very trying to be careful about it. And then also centered the mids on the stereo. This is a mid side thing, so here's mid, here's side. So here's all stereo, here's no stereo. And on the low end, not so much stereo. On the mid and the high is steadily more stereo. And then, because that creates kind of a weird tinny tinny effect, a lot of specific EQ. To taste, of course, but this was not merely looking at where the holes were and trying to patch them up by putting up some bumps there. This was mostly about curtailing some of the really burny 2K, 5K, and then the really big peak in the mid, which I did bring down with some of that compression, but I also liked the tone that was also in there when that wasn't happening, so doing that there. And then also coming down a bit on some of the 100 hertz, because there was some things in there. However, look at like the behavior of this little section. Actually, I can just help you here and make it a whole lot bigger. So here comes this thing up here. It does not quite make it up to where this bump is, right? And then when this bump isn't there, I personally get this weird like desire for that to keep going. And then that's the FM. That's the FM doing that. And I could go in there, I could make it go higher, but that doesn't actually do the job. And really what it is that I'm expecting there to be a heavier presence of frequency in that, just in this weird little section. And you can actually just do that if you do a boost. People say not to do boosts, and they say only do cuts. And if I was being particularly like ridiculous about it, I could do one of those like fake cuts, fake boosts where like you cut everything else except that area and then you boost the whole thing. That would be the thing that would preserve phaseness. But after that thing with the comb filter, phaseness is not really a big concern for us. Which helps that bit out. Yay! Aww. And that's it for this dude. This patcher will be available to download in the description of this video. Also, this serum will be available to download by itself, if that's a thing. It'll be a little zip. I'll have both. If you have any questions about this, please let me know. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and all that good stuff. And as usual, have a nice day.